Number 6. Jessie L. Matthew. Virginia Tech student Morgan Dana Harrington accompanied 3 of her friends to a Metallica concert at the John Paul Jones Arena in Charlottesville on October 17th of 2009. During the opening act's performance, 20-year-old Harrington reportedly left to use the restroom but somehow got outside of the arena and was subsequently denied re-entry by security. She contacted her friends and told them not to worry, stating that she'd simply make her way back home. The young woman was last seen alive hitchhiking on a nearby bridge at about 9:30 p.m. According to eyewitness testimony the following day, Harrington's purse containing her ID card and cell phone was found in the RV lot at the University of Virginia's athletic field. Following an extensive police investigation, her skeletal remains were ultimately discovered in January of 2010, roughly 10 miles from the arena in a remote area of the 742-acre Anchorage Farm complex. Although the authorities didn't release the details of Harrington's death, her parents later revealed that it was extremely violent in nature and that several of her bones had been broken. The case remained unsolved until the fall of 2014 when Hannah Graham, a second-year student at the University of Virginia, was abducted and later found dead on an abandoned property in Albemarle County. Investigators were able to use forensic evidence to link the 2 cases to the same perpetrator, Jessie L. Matthew. The latter, who'd faced 2 previous assault accusations in the early 2000s, had attempted to reinvent himself, working periodically as a taxi driver and hospital porter. However, he'd been leading a double life, regularly stalking young women at bars during the nighttime hours. In March of 2016, Matthew pleaded guilty to the abduction and murder of both Graham and Harrington, and he consequently received 4 life sentences, with no possibility of parole. Number 5. William Hernando Usma Acosta. In June of 1994, Colombian man William Hernando Usma Acosta gunned down his wife during a domestic violence incident before firing at his daughter when she tried to intervene. Shortly thereafter, the man fled the country and, according to the FBI, became the subject of an Interpol Red Notice. Sometime in 1995, Usma Acosta entered the United States illegally and began living in the town of Belmont, Massachusetts, under the alias Carlos Alberto Rendon. While his whereabouts remained unknown to the authorities, Usma Acosta was sentenced to 45 years in prison after being convicted in absentia to charges of aggravated murder, aggravated attempted murder, and illegal possession of a firearm. In June of 2020, the FBI received a tip that the fugitive might have been residing in the greater Boston area, and the agency's Violent Crimes Task Force ultimately tracked him down to his home in Belmont. According to subsequent reports, Usma Acosta had married a United States citizen in 1998 and had begun leading a double life with his American wife and son. He later applied for naturalization to the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, allegedly submitting a fraudulent Colombian birth certificate and fingerprints to cover up his criminal past. In April of 2022, the FBI and Immigration and Customs Enforcement announced that Usma Acosta had finally been arrested. It was reported that he'd be relinquished to the custody of Colombian authorities, after which he'd begin the prison sentence associated with his wife's murder. Number 4. Paige Bergefeld. On June the 28th of 2007, Colorado woman Paige Bergefeld left her 3 children with their live-in nanny at her Grand Junction residence, indicating that she'd return later that evening. However, having never come back home as she promised, 34-year-old Bergefeld was soon reported missing to the police. A few days later, her vehicle was discovered set ablaze in a Grand Junction parking lot. Bergefeld herself was nowhere to be found, but many of her belongings had reportedly been strewn along the side of Highway 50. As the police continued their effort to track down the missing woman, they uncovered that she'd secretly been leading a double life, running an escort business called Models Inc. While interviewing her acquaintances, investigators learned that the twice-divorced woman was known in online advertisements as Carrie, a high-priced escort. Although her family was unaware of her scandalous double life, it was believed that Bergefeld had started her secret enterprise to help pay off her debts, which included a huge mortgage. In 2012, the woman's skeletal remains were found by hikers in Delta County. Bergefeld's bones reportedly suggested that she'd sustained a badly fractured cheekbone at or near the time of her death. Lester Ralph Jones, who had solicited the victim's escort services the day before she went missing, was identified as a suspect in her disappearance and was later arrested for her murder. Jones's first criminal trial ended in a hung jury. However, following a retrial in 2016, he was convicted of each count levied against him, including first-degree murder and kidnapping. He was consequently sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Number 3. Ernest Shearer III. The decomposed bodies of Ernest Shearer Jr. and Charlene Abendroth were found at their Castlewood Country Club home in Pleasanton, California, on March 14th of 2008. As was subsequently gathered by investigators, the couple had been brutally beaten with a baseball bat before having their throats slashed. A few weeks after the Alameda County Sheriff's Office launched an official investigation into the slayings, a pair of detectives traveled to Las Vegas to speak with Bill Krause, a nightclub musician and friend of the victim's son, Ernest Shearer III. Krause would later testify in court that Shearer had approached him and inquired about obtaining a firearm a couple of weeks before the murders were committed. Although the two did go to a gun store in Pahrump to shop around, Krause indicated that they didn't ultimately purchase anything. On the day the bodies were discovered, Shearer allegedly called Krause to tell him that he had to go to California because of a family emergency. However, Krause claimed that 31-year-old Shearer had sounded so well put together, despite having supposedly just learned that his parents had been brutally murdered. It subsequently emerged that Shearer had been leading a double life in Las Vegas, one characterized by casual dating and a career as a professional poker player. He'd kept it a secret from his family back in Brea, California, where he was a married father of one. Shearer was eventually arrested in early 2009 after Alameda County authorities had collected enough circumstantial evidence to pursue criminal charges against him in connection to his parents' deaths. In March of 2011, the man was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, as well as 3 special circumstances allegations, 2 counts of murder for financial gain, and 1 count of committing multiple murders. Prosecutors contended that Shearer had killed his parents in order to gain access to his sizable inheritance, which he'd intended to use to pay off the gambling debts he'd accrued as part of his secret life in Las Vegas. As a consequence for his conviction, Shearer was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Today's topic was requested by Sneaky Black, Sheila Salpietra, and Celestial Star. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Kathleen West. On the morning of January the 13th of 2018, a resident of Calera, Alabama, found the lifeless body of her neighbor Kathleen West lying face down across the street from her home. Upon inspecting the scene further, the neighbor discovered that the woman, a wife and mother of one, was only partially clothed and had a bloody wound on her head. A cell phone had been placed on the ground next to her body along with an empty bottle of the plant-based spirit absinthe. Local authorities subsequently launched an official probe into the matter, during which they interviewed dozens of witnesses and submitted several volumes of evidence for testing. As the murder investigation progressed over the course of the next 5 weeks, it publicly emerged that West, whose social media presence suggested that she'd been an average suburban housewife, had actually been leading a double life as an online model. She reportedly operated a subscription-only adult website where she posted extremely suggestive photographs of herself in scantily clad outfits under the alias Kitty Cat West. On the morning of February the 22nd, Calera police formally charged the victim's husband, William Jeff West, a former U.S. military policeman and campus security guard, with her murder. Police records indicated that while William claimed to have never had a problem with his wife's online alter ego, he'd carried out her killing nevertheless, perhaps as a form of retribution for her titillating exhibitionism. Prosecutors contended that William had fatally struck the victim over the head with a liquor bottle before discarding her body in the street. Following a 4-day trial, he was convicted of manslaughter and consequently sentenced to 16 years in prison. Number 1. Brandon Woodruff. A 19-year-old student at Abilene Christian University in Texas was arrested for the murder of both of his parents at their home in Royce City in October of 2005. The suspect, Brandon Woodruff, had reportedly visited his parents' house on the night of October the 16th. The teen later told investigators that he left after the family had dinner together, but 2 days later, his parents, Dennis and Norma Woodruff, were found brutally murdered in their home. Brandon was named as the prime suspect, given that he'd been the last known person to see the victims alive. Royce City Police later detailed how Dennis had been shot once and stabbed 9 times, while Norma had suffered multiple gunshot wounds and had her neck slashed. Although the medical examiner wasn't able to confirm the victim's time of death, investigators concluded that the murder must have been committed between 9 and 11 p.m. on the night of Brandon's visit. Despite vehemently maintaining his innocence, Brandon was ultimately taken into custody on a charge of capital murder. It subsequently emerged that the teen had secretly been leading a double life as a gay man. He reportedly had a steady girlfriend at the time. However, it was determined that he'd been dating other men, regularly danced at gay nightclubs, and had even traveled out of state to appear in adult films. Brandon was ultimately found guilty of his parents' murder and sentenced to spend the remainder of his life behind bars. In May of 2022, Brandon was featured in an episode of ABC's investigative journalism series, 2020. In it, he claimed that he hadn't been given a fair trial and that the jury had only convicted him because he'd been portrayed as a wild gay man, leading a crazed double life. Brandon further indicated that he would never stop fighting to prove his innocence and finally obtain exoneration. Thanks for watching. Would you rather discover that your parents moonlighted as exotic dancers, or find a squatter who's secretly been living in your house for months? Let us know in the comments section below.